Silver Wolf has got access to the most unique debuff in the game that has the potential to completely change how we approach team building for specific matchups. She also comes packed with a debuff for all of the main stats in the game: attack, defense, and speed. She's able to do this without being reliant on skill points, which makes her incredibly flexible. That all sounds pretty great, but what exactly can we expect out of this genius hacker Stellaron Hunter, and is it enough to hack her way into your party? So a lot of people right now are hyper focused on her weakness implanting ability, but that's not all that Silver Wolf brings to the table. And the reason why everyone's talking about Silver Wolf's skill is because it's a completely new mechanic, at least when it comes to character abilities. It allows Silver Wolf to apply a weakness implant debuff. The skill isn't completely new, however. In the simulated universe, we can implant ice weakness technically. And so this character's whole focus is to apply as many debuffs as possible so that your team can deal out as much damage as possible. So let's talk about the crux of it all, her skill. Her skill has a high chance to apply one weakness of an on-field ally's type to the selected enemy. The high chance is not 100% and it scales with trace level. The weakness is randomly selected from all the types on your team, including Silver Wolf. The ability will also reduce the enemy's damage resistance to that weakness by an unscaled 20% or 2 turns. Now, when further reading the description for this skill, it has me a bit worried, but I do hope that HoYoverse has put some kind of intelligence into the skill. It reads, if the enemy already has that type weakness, the damage resistance reduction will not be triggered. This does imply that a weakness can be implanted onto the enemy, even if they are already weak to that element. Now, it is my hope, and I'll be really disappointed if HoYoverse literally just called a math.random function and called it good. But anyway, I hope that this line was added just because it was possible to bring a team into a matchup where the boss is already weak to all of the types on the team. This way, the next line in this skill's description can always be triggered. And that line reads, it will additionally reduce the all-type resistance of the enemy for 2 turns. So at the very least, if you're bringing Silver Wolf to a matchup where she can't implant a new weakness, her ability still has some value in reducing the all-type resistance so that all of your teammates get some extra damage output from her skill. This damage resistance debuff also scales with trace level. And so again, hopefully they have coded some kind of intelligence in the skill where it will at least check if the enemy isn't weak to one of the types on the team first before applying the weakness implant. If it truly is random, then in all honesty, the skill is not very good because there's just too much randomness. Now, the first thing that everyone thought of when they first saw the RNG on this ability was to run her on a mono element team in order to mitigate the randomness. And it's a great idea, but I don't think it's that practical, at least not in every single situation. HoYoverse seems to have designed the game so that you are carefully crafting teams for certain matchups, instead of being able to brute force through everything with one team. Now, maybe once we get max leveled characters, that might be possible, but as of right now, a team that is properly built to tackle the content is the way to go. So if you build your team to cover the weaknesses of the boss, you can mitigate the RNG of the ability. Let's take a practical example with Gepard, who's weak to physical, lightning, and imaginary. You could bring a team of Natasha, Serval, Sela, and Silver Wolf, and then you should implant quantum weakness every single time you pop her skill. Unless, of course, like I mentioned earlier, and HoYoverse did not code proper intelligence into the skill. But let's pray that HoYoverse isn't that dense. Another team you could use could be Bailu, Sushang, Serval, and Silver Wolf. In this case, quantum will always be implanted onto Gepard. So basically, if you bring 2 or more elements to the boss that they aren't weak to, is going to make the skill way too RNG dependent. If you bring exactly 2, then it becomes a 50-50 coin toss, which is not entirely terrible. But anything past or lower than 50% is just way too much randomness and devalues the skill quite a bit. So that means team crafting is incredibly important whenever you bring Silver Wolf to a battle. And honestly, I think this makes it pretty fun because it's kind of like a little mini puzzle that you have to figure out in order to get the correct weaknesses to line up with the boss. As mentioned before, the skill just has a high chance to apply the weakness implant. It's not 100%, so that means effect hit rate is necessary for consistency. And we'll talk about ways to achieve that later on in the video. Silver Wolf also has 2 traces related to her skill. At Ascension 4, she can increase the number of turns that weakness implant lasts by 1 turn, making it 3 turns. This means she's not super skill point hungry. Again, another really good trait for a character, only needing to refresh it every 3 turns. Of course, assuming you were successful in implanting it on the first time, because again, it's not 100% success rate. At Ascension 6, if there are 3 or more debuffs on the enemy, the skill decreases the all-type resistance by another 3%. To be honest, 3% is pretty low, so I'm a little bit disappointed on that, but hey, a little bit of extra damage is a little bit of extra damage. The skill also has some pretty decent damage as well. Its scaling at trace level 6 is 147% compared to Seela's 165. So for a Nihility character, that's pretty solid. These two characters also have the same amount of base attack. I'm not saying that Silver Wolf is going to be doing Seela levels of damage, but she's doing some pretty good damage. Next up is Silver Wolf's ultimate. It costs 110 energy and deals high quantum damage to a single target, and also has a high base chance to reduce the enemy's defense by a pretty good amount. The defense reduction lasts 3 turns, which is pretty long compared to our other defense shredder, Pela, which only lasts 2 turns. This is a pretty simple ultimate. However, with the new 4-star light cone and her Eidolons, her ultimate becomes a lot more intricate. So I think you can see now that Silver Wolf just isn't a weakness implanter. She's also a pretty solid defense debuffer. So this means that not only is keeping up the weakness implant a priority for Silver Wolf, but also keeping the defense debuff from the ultimate is just as important. So then you're probably wondering, how many turns does it take for Silver Wolf to be able to cast her ultimate? So without any consideration into light cones or energy recharge, if we're starting off in the Memory of Chaos, we'll begin with 55 energy, and in order to cast an ultimate, it's going to take 1 skill and then 2 basic attacks. That means 3 actions in order to cast her ultimate. This is not considering if she gets attacked. After 2 actions of her skill and basic attack, she'll only have regenerated 105 energy, which is 5 short of her ultimate. Now, if we start at 5 energy, this means right after casting our ultimate, it's going to take 5 actions to hit 115 energy. 4 actions will put us just 5 energy short of casting an ultimate. So getting attacked here will probably get you your ultimate, but again, different attacks will regenerate different amounts of energy. So it's not exactly 100% consistent. Now, if we start building Silver Wolf for a little bit of energy recharge using a 5-star link rope, we can reduce the number of actions down from 5 to 4. Even with a 5-star energy recharge link rope, 3 actions puts us at about 89.55 energy. So this is still quite a ways off from 110. So even attacks here will probably not allow us to get enough energy within 3 turns. Now, if we consider her 4-star light cone, and without an energy recharge rope, it is also similarly 4 actions. We'll gain 5 after casting the ultimate, 38 after using a skill, 28 after using a basic attack. So 5 plus 38 plus 28 plus 28 and plus a third 28 is enough to give us 110 very consistently. Also assuming that the ultimate does apply the defense reduction debuff. Since the light cone requires you to attack an enemy that has been debuffed by a defense down in order to regenerate an extra 8 energy at Superimposition 5. This means it is entirely possible to lower the amount of actions here down to 3 if we use the free 4-star light cone at Superimposition 5 and also an energy recharge link rope. A single skill is giving us about 45 energy now, and a basic attack is giving us 33. This means we can easily reach at least 110 within 3 actions. Of course, again, assuming we do apply that defense debuff with our ultimate. And the times when that slight chance of our ultimate not applying that debuff for defense, our talent also does have that chance to implant a bug to reduce their defense. So we kind of have at least 2 options to reduce defense, which increases our consistency to a good degree. So an ultimate that gives us pretty much 100% uptime on defense reduction is pretty good. In addition to the weakness implant reducing the damage resistance of the weakness that we implant, Silver Wolf has a lot of access to debuffing the enemy's natural defenses and increases our team's damage output by quite a bit. And all of this at a pretty good uptime, all the while without using too many skills. Now, I needed to add a section for her Eidolons because they are just absolutely insane for her ultimate. In my opinion, Silver Wolf's E1 is absolutely huge. She regains 7 energy for every debuff on the enemy she used it on up to 5 times. This means a maximum of 35 energy can be refunded after casting an ult, or 40 after the base 5 for casting an ultimate. This means that Silver Wolf can cast an ultimate within 2 actions with a energy recharge 5-star link rope, or even 3 actions without the rope, assuming you can consistently get the 35 energy back from the ultimate. Her remaining Eidolons are also just crazy extra damage abilities. For every debuff on the enemy, she deals additional quantum damage up to 5 times with her ultimate. And then also for every debuff, she can deal extra damage on all of her abilities up to an extra 100%. Honestly, that just looks like crazy amounts of damage output. Now, I'm gushing and hyping up her Eidolons, but I am not endorsing it. I personally have a pretty conservative stance when it comes to Eidolons, and I don't like when they lock character mechanics behind them. In my opinion, Eidolons should only be strictly damage boosts or efficiency boosts. For example, dealing extra damage with an ultimate or skill, like one of Qingque's Eidolons. Locking a playstyle behind Eidolons completely sucks. These Eidolons, where you are getting rewarded for applying as many debuffs on the enemy, should have been in her base kit to begin with, and then her Eidolons should have enhanced it. Even if it was something like 1 energy for the base, and then they raised it up to 7 with her Eidolon. So that makes me really disappointed. It requires Eidolons in order to make Silver Wolf feel rewarding to play, since her base kit doesn't reward you directly for successfully applying lots of debuffs on enemies. Next up is Silver Wolf's talent. Silver Wolf will have a chance to randomly apply a bug onto the enemy whenever she attacks, and this debuff will last 3 turns. Presumably, this can be applied either with her basic attack or skill or ultimate. The chance to apply this bug scales higher with trace level, and the potency of the debuff also increases with trace level. She has a bonus trace to extend the turn of these debuffs by 1 turn, and whenever an enemy gets weakness broken, there's a 65% chance to implant a random bug onto the enemy. There are 3 types of bugs: an attack debuff, a defense debuff, and a speed debuff. Defense and speed, in my opinion, are definitely the more valuable ones, but debuffs are debuffs, and with her Eidolons, you want the chance to apply any kind of debuff as much as possible. So with all that said, Silver Wolf looks pretty dang good. However, she's not perfect, and she definitely has weaknesses. First off is that many of her abilities don't have a 100% chance to apply, especially in the lower trace levels, which means we need to build some effect hit rate percent for better consistency. She does have several abilities with a 100% base chance, but her weakness implant ability is only 90% at maximum trace level and 80% at level 6. Add in the fact that enemies have natural built-in debuff resistance, so that's not even a true 80% or 90%. Her talent to implant bugs also only has a 78% chance at max level and 66 at level 6, so it's even lower. Thankfully, she does have some built-in effect hit rate with traces, but it's not a lot. The free light cone that we get gives us a really nice 40% extra effect hit rate, which will definitely mitigate many of these downsides for free-to-play players. So should you pull for Silver Wolf, the main thing to consider is that she has a very unique ability that opens up a ton of options. Expanding your options is one of the best things you can do in a turn-based game, so adding her to your roster is definitely valuable in my opinion. This ability also has a pretty high chance to retain value later down the road than DPS characters. This is because DPS characters are easy to produce and very easy to power creep. Unique abilities and debuffs are harder to become obsolete, since making new characters that debuff stats at higher values is just way too on the nose. With DPS characters, they can kind of hide DPS behind cool gimmicks or extra effects. And knowing Hoyoverse's track record, I'm pretty sure they aren't going to power creep debuffs. So I do think that Silver Wolf is very much worth adding to your party just because of the sheer amount of options she'll open up for your team building and approaching different matchups. She's also just really damn cute. If you guys are looking for a similar type of analysis but for Locha, then take a look at this video.